What is good, everybody? BBK Dragoon coming at you today with 5 reasons to be excited for Borderlands 3. If you didn't catch the gameplay reveal last week, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description below. Gearbox and Randy Pitchford absolutely killed the presentation, and the game is looking fantastic. Here are 5 reasons to be excited for it, and a few of these that went under the radar. Not a lot of people saw all of these at the presentation, so let's go in. Number 1, this is the longest time Gearbox has ever had to work on a title. They gave some interviews about this, and they talked a little bit about it at the end of the event, but Borderlands 3 is actually really close to being in beta, which means that Gearbox now has the entire summer just for polish. As noted by Randy Pitchford, 2K gave them a lengthy runway with Borderlands 3, the longest that they've ever had in the company's history, to make the game that they wanted to make and create something that is well done and polished. As you could probably see from the event, the game looks fairly close to being finished. Devs throughout actually backed this up by saying, yeah, we are really close for it to be in beta, and players are going to get the chance to try this out at GuardianCon, it'll be at E3 and Gamescom, which gives the developers a lengthy amount of time to polish this bad boy up. That is really exciting to hear, especially in an era of plenty of AAA titles releasing unfinished and then being patched over time. It's a breath of fresh air when you can look at the game from the outset and basically tell these guys have pretty much wrapped up most of the production, so that the product we get in September is most likely going to be just this well-crafted, finely tuned thing that they've had plenty of time to put in the extra work for. You know, there's a lot of stories about crunch going on right now, and I don't know how it plays out with Gearbox, but hopefully these guys had such a long runway that it creates a pretty healthy developer space for these guys, that they're not putting in these 80-hour weeks that we hear rumors of with the Fortnite dudes. Number 2 is the focus on fun. This one comes directly from the What's Good Games podcast, who had the chance to actually talk to some of the developers about something they noticed while they were playing. If you have played a Borderlands game, you know recoil management is a part of things. It's just how it is. Your lower end tier guns bounce quite a bit. As you progress further, you're going to get weapons that feel better to use. However, at the event, most of the weapons looked fairly easy to control, and it looked like there wasn't much recoil management having to happen, and that was even with some of the earlier guns. Was this just some event magic where the developers were giving people the secret sauce to make it feel great? Well, the What's Good Game crew actually talked about this and asked one of the developers, and it turns out there is a mentality shift where every weapon you use should be fun. Obviously, the old idea is in RPG-based games, you start with bad gear so you have somewhere to go. You progress towards the better gear. The idea in Borderlands 3, however, is to make every weapon fun. So if we start you even with those white common weapons out that feel good to use, you're still going to progress and get some crazy, ridiculous, creative weapons. However, everything should feel fun. You shouldn't feel punished for using any weapon, even the starter guns. And that philosophy was seen throughout the entire event. I love this concept because it seems very simple on the surface, and again, is probably something that only works in a PvE-only shooter, because Borderlands can be as ridiculous as possible with their weapon design, because they don't ever have to think about PvP balance in the equation. So such a simple, small thing, yet ultimately will probably create a lot of fun and more engagement with players. Oftentimes, the first few hours really dictate a player's idea and thoughts about a game moving forward. So if the weapons that you're using from the very beginning are just fun to use, and you're not having to worry about recoil management or a gun bouncing all over the place just because it's low tier, well, I think that's a good thing, so long as the really awesome rewards still remain creative and impressive down the road. The third one was very obvious, but I don't think people recognize or give enough credit to it: loot instancing. So all the math is handled on the back end. Let's say you're playing with a level 25 player and you're level 15. They've done the math to where it feels like both of you are having a similar degree of challenge. Not only that, when there is loot that's being dropped, it'll drop at an appropriate level for what your character is. This allows for you to pick up and play with a group of friends who have a very different set of levels, and that is a big deal. How many of you have played an MMO before where your buddy spends an extra 3 or 4 hours one night and then suddenly you can never play together again because your level disparity is so big? Well, I ran into that quite a few times with Borderlands. I could safely say I've probably played the first 5 hours of Borderlands 2 over and over again, just because groups can spread out in levels so quickly. Loot instancing is a really great idea to still let people have valuable rewards and get excited without having to worry about players getting too far away or too far, down from their levels. It's just smart, honestly. However, the thing here I want to highlight and what I'm also excited about is a classic mode. The developers at Gearbox have recognized there are people who like shared world loot, who like the idea of being able to, ninja that piece of loot from your buddy, or also just come into your buddy's game if they're super high level and power level you up. They didn't need to do this, but it's just a nice added polish point for Gearbox to say, look, we respect the way that some of you guys have come to love our game. We're still going to honor that, but we're also giving you the option to play it in this new way, the loot instanced way, in this level matching way, and give that a shot too. They didn't need to put a classic mode in, they really didn't, and yet they've took the time and the effort to do so, which I think is pretty rad. The next one is the new EchoCast Twitch extension. This is a very interesting concept. If any of you have been around for Twitch drops before, especially Warframes, where you were rewarded for sitting in a person's stream and maybe a piece of gear or an in-game item would drop for you if you spent X amount of time in streams with drops enabled. It's a cool concept on the outset, but you realize it led to a lot of just complete dead viewership. People keeping Twitch tabs open all over the place to try and sort of zombie farm up that watch time. And it's always been a trick or a challenge for streamers to really deal with this, because you want an active audience, you want people participating, you don't want people just opening your tab just because. The new Twitch extension that they put together, EchoCast for Borderlands 3, aims to address these things. Not only can you see the build that the person who's streaming is using or the weapons that they have equipped, but at certain points in the game, you can receive loot that they are actually interacting with. So let's say the streamer runs across a particular chest, an event will appear on the EchoCast while you're watching your streamer. You click and you basically enter into a quasi raffle to see if you get a chance at some of the loot dropped from that particular in-game chest. Sounds a little weird when I say it, but when you actually use it, it's kind of cool. Now granted, it's sort of a glorified raffle, but at the same time too, I think it could evolve over time to really give a chance for these kind of drop extensions to create viewer interactivity. It's kind of cool if the streamer you're watching just got a weapon and then, gets raffled out to the player base. It doesn't really exist in that function yet, but the idea is that over the next 4 months, it could get to that point. And what is kind of cool, if you're watching Borderlands stuff over Twitch, you have 4 months to earn in-game loot before the game even releases. Like I said, cool concept. We'll have to see where it goes. I did use it, and I didn't get any of the drops at the certain points, but it did keep you more engaged than just minimizing the stream and hoping that maybe you'd get randomly lucky and get one of those drops after a certain point in time. I do know, by the way, that some of these streams are Twitch is trying to implement things where your volume needs to be above 0 and it won't work if it's not the active window, all sorts of stuff like that. But EchoCast seems like a cool concept that will probably extend to other games. Now, does this get around Twitch's whole payment system for this stuff? I don't know, because you do have to pay Twitch for these periods of drops. So maybe this extension tries to skirt around some of that rules. I doubt it, though. If, Twitch found out about that, they're probably at least in some sort of coordination or some sort of business deal on this thing. But it seems pretty cool. Number 5, it's Borderlands. It's very clearly Borderlands. It's more of what you love, and I think that's important. While the game does feature some modernization elements like clambering and sliding and this new hub world where you can travel to different planets, it still is Borderlands at its core. It maintains that humor, it maintains that same style, and they're giving players more of what they expect. And I love that when a developer has the courage not to try and innovate with every single iteration in the franchise, completely radically evolve it and change it to be its own thing, but rather honors players' expectations and honors the legacy of a franchise while moving it forward in certain aspects, in nuanced ways. I am super appreciative when a developer does not radically change their franchise just for the sake of innovation, but when they can also balance, classic players' expectations and people who've been a fan of Borderlands for a long time. It's very clear that Borderlands 3 aims to be another Borderlands game. And even though the industry is doing all sorts of crazy stuff right now with different monetization models and ongoing support model shifting, it sounds like Borderlands 3 is going to stick with the tried and true, you pay up front, they're going to have great campaign DLC down the road, but it's not going that free-to-play route, and it's not going to be monetized through loot boxes and all that jazz. Granted, there's a little controversy there with what was said about cosmetics. I'm not going to deep dive into this one because it just seems like it was the press running away with the statement. But at the same time, it's definitely still worth asking that question, which we'll cover at a future date. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by subscribing to the channel. At BBK Dragoon on Twitter as well. I'd love to see you guys and talk with you over there. Are you excited for Borderlands 3? Let me know about it down in the comments below. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk with you again very soon.